After Yoshi's Crafted World, I seriously wonder about the next Yoshi game, if we're ever gonna see another one, that is. For those who haven't played Crafted World, comparing it to any of the other games, it's just not nearly as good. As soon as I finished recording for my initial review, I dropped it and did not come back. Because of this, I'm a bit worried for Yoshi's future. If he does get another game, whether it be on Switch or Nintendo's next console, I think what Yoshi really needs is a refresher. Okay, let me preface this before diving into that can of worms. Recently, I revisited Yoshi's Crafted World to help myself determine exactly what I don't like about the game and refresh my thoughts on other aspects of it to then determine what I think could work as a follow-up entry or something entirely different. For starters, the levels are so boring. I think the length of the levels is fine, but when it comes down to the design, it doesn't stack up. It's basic, bland, and quite frankly uninteresting. We've seen much better, more memorable levels showcased in Yoshi's Woolly World, and while yes, the levels in that game can get pretty lengthy, at least they stay fun for the most part. The variety of gimmicks is there in Yoshi's Crafted World, but they feel underutilized to the point where levels can feel very samey. One of the biggest problems the game faces is its main gimmick, the whole foreground and background interaction. It relies so heavily on the idea of throwing eggs into the background to grab something to progress in a level, or for the souvenir collectibles, or the stupid freaking box kid. It's just such a poorly executed gimmick. Honestly, I think Yoshi's Crafted World would have been better off being a 3D game if the developers didn't want to make another Yoshi's Island type game. Think about it, large open 3D levels with souvenirs scattered about, functioning in a similar way as in Crafted World. You go up to an NPC in whatever level you're in, they ask you to collect a certain number of a certain kind of souvenir, and you would have to go out and find it. Meanwhile, there would still be flowers and red coins to collect, but I believe the main focus of the game could then be on clearing a certain number of craft hunts to unlock the next level. I imagine it playing somewhat like Super Mario 64 with sandbox-like levels, and the vehicle levels could be delegated to hidden optional challenges. Heck, why stop at that? Maybe there would even be some puzzles to solve and bosses that could be incorporated into the levels. For example, in the Acorn Forest where you fight Spike the Piranha in Yoshi's Crafted World, perhaps by hitting a chestnut up in the highest tree in the forest, you could trigger a boss cutscene with Bowser Jr. and Kamek. I apologize if I'm making this sound ambiguous, but I really don't have much to go off of to show you all visual examples of what I mean, so you're gonna have to use your imagination here. Anyway, main story progression would still be locked behind the magical fruity pebbles, I mean the dream gems. Yeah, I know I said a minute ago that you could unlock levels through completing souvenir hunts, but think about it like this. Dream gems unlock a set of levels, with the first level in the bunch being the only one that's initially available, and completing a certain number of souvenir hunts in that level unlocks the next level, and so on. The premise of the game would have something to do with Kamek and Bowser Jr. screwing things up around each world, and by helping the natives of each level, they'd find some way to help you get to the next area. Also, I would throw away the arts and crafts aesthetic. It's super overused at this point. It's kind of just becoming that generic Yoshi art style, and people will probably remember Yoshi games in the future for just looking like this, and I really don't want that, because it's such a shame. There's a lot of potential with Yoshi art styles to get really creative, but the recent Yoshi games have kind of followed in the footsteps of one another. Maybe something more familiar to the Yoshi's Island art style could suffice. And for the music, for crying out loud, do not make every track use one motif. Like, it makes every song sound just about the same, and it's driven me nuts in Yoshi's Crafted World. Lastly, this is more of an optional detail, but Yoshi skins could return in a similar way as in Yoshi's Woolly World, giving Amiibo a new usage, seeing as they're mostly useless nowadays. Overall, I feel like it's a rough concept, but one that could work and make a whole lot more sense than what Yoshi's Crafted World was trying to do. I'm not sure though, I don't want to come off as pretentious for saying this, so let me know what you think. There's obviously a lot I haven't accounted for, and maybe this wouldn't work as well as I think it could, but just give us something different, please. If Kirby refuses to go 3D for a proper platformer entry, then if nothing else, Yoshi should. Now back to the actual Yoshi's Crafted World, not the hypothetical crap. What actually makes the collectibles so poorly thought out? The biggest issue I have is that you're constantly having to stop and look in the back background to make sure you're not missing something if you want to get a few collectibles, and avoiding collecting them doesn't make it much better. Either way, I feel that the game is monotonously boring. Collecting things doesn't personally give me any satisfaction due to the overwhelming number of collectibles spread throughout the standard and flip side levels. If anything, it's super repetitive doing souvenir hunts. Also, flip side levels are a very mixed concept at best. They all go for the same approach where you're hunting for the Poochie Pups, with an extra flower being awarded if you can bring all of them to the end of the level within 3 minutes. While the level layouts are different every time, it's just so samey, repetitive, and some other third thing. I know at this point it may sound like I'm just nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking, but you tell me what's supposed to be fun about searching for the Poochie Pups over and over and over and over again. My point is, if the standard levels could get variety in gameplay occasionally, why couldn't the flip side levels get something else too? It feels kind of like a throwaway idea that started as something cool but got pushed to the side, and before the developers realized it, they hadn't added anything to do in the flip sides of stages, so they quickly mashed something together in the hopes that no one will notice. It's really a shame because I think the flip side could have been incorporated into the standard levels in a clever way, but it comes off as an afterthought. Now, I don't believe that they didn't put effort into this game. The huge number of collectibles more than shows that that is not the case. The graphics look great, not so much on handheld, but considering what's all going on in the screen, I'm honestly surprised they got it to look this good. The bosses aren't terrible, but they're all about the same in terms of difficulty. They only get harder if you're trying to complete all of their extra flower challenges, like beating them within a certain amount of time. There is one boss I didn't mention in my original review though, so I might as well mention it now or else I will never get to talk about it again. So there's a secret boss in the game that you unlock by going through the hidden hills, which if memory serves, you unlock after beating the game. These levels are about as hard as the game gets, and these are extra levels, so yeah, though they aren't very well designed, so that's not really saying much. Anyway, after you've beaten those levels, you unlock the extra boss which took so long for me to beat, Kamek. Straight and to the point, I hate this guy. His fight is essentially a boss rush remixing a few of the game's bosses. The catch is, he sends a bunch of objects flying at you just as he pops out of each contraption, giving you a small window of opportunity to damage him, though I've had constant times where I just barely miss him. Hit him once and he moves on to the next phase, then again, one last time, and you're at the final phase where you're put into the Yoshi bot thing and you now have to hit each of the vehicles coming towards you to then damage Kamek. By far, this is the most annoying part because it can take quite some time to get down the enemy pattern, and if you die, you get sent back to the very beginning of the fight. It's the only reason why I had to use a costume. Yeah, those things that make an already easy game easier by giving you more health. This is the only time they're actually useful, and it's for a stupid, dumb boss. You don't even get anything cool for beating him, just a costume based on Kamek and the opportunity to give this guy 317 flowers? You're a greedy little box. That said, what do I think the future holds for Yoshi? Well, let me get this out there first, I don't believe they'll make a 3D Yoshi game. For some reason, HAL Laboratory and Goodfeel seem adamant on repeating the same formula over and over again with minimal changes to the core gameplay for their respective series. I'm comparing the two companies because for years Yoshi and Kirby have been stuck as 2D platformers. Kirby had a chance of getting a mainline 3D platformer, but it got cancelled, so we'll never know how that would have turned out. Yeah, Kirby's Blow Up Blast Deluxe does exist, but that's a spin-off title and there aren't any copy abilities in it. I do think another 2D Yoshi platformer has decent potential if they focus on working the collectibles into the levels rather than designing the levels around the collectibles, if that makes any sense. Yoshi's Woolly World was much better off being handled this way because to this day, after replaying it 3 times, I still believe it's the best Yoshi game. On the other hand, a Yoshi story-styled sequel could be interesting if they improved upon the design, but currently I can't say for sure whether or not I'm fully confident in anything exciting happening for Yoshi. They did make Woolly World, being, as I said, one of my favorite games, but they just as easily managed to disappoint me with Crafted World. All I can do at the moment is hope that whatever they make next doesn't try to focus too hard on a gimmick that wasn't well thought out to begin with. It makes the gameplay feel much more basic than it really has to be. Crafted World could would have been the Yoshi game to step out of Yoshi's comfort zone again, but unfortunately it wasn't. But what do you think? Do you like Yoshi's Crafted World or do you not? And what do you think about my concept for a potential future Yoshi game? Let's start a discussion in the comments. Oh, hi, thank you for watching this. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this. I would really appreciate it. And also, feel free to share this with any friends who you think might like the video. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you, goodbye, and